The night my father laughed at me, my mother didn't raise her voice. She raised the stakes. I'm going to take you back to a room full of champagne flutes, forced smiles, and one question that sliced through me like a blade. The kind of question that's meant to humiliate you in public, so no one notices the quiet cruelty behind it. And I promise, if you've ever been compared, minimized, or turned into a punchline at a family gathering, this story is going to sit with you long after the video ends. My name is Nora Whitfield. I'm 27 years old, and I work as a commercial interior designer in Savannah, Georgia. I design beautiful spaces for strangers, hotels, offices, waterfront rentals, while growing up in a home where I was treated like leftover furniture. Useful, invisible, easily replaced. It happened at our year-end family party, December 29th. Close enough to New Year's that everyone was already reflective, already tipsy, already bold enough to say the quiet parts out loud. My father, Gerald, had that familiar glassy look. Not drunk enough to stumble, just drunk enough to be cruel. He stood up mid-toast, smiled too wide, cleared his throat. Before we welcome the new year, he said, I have a question. Then he turned to me, slowly, deliberately. Nora, he laughed. When are you finally going to own something impressive? Like a lake house? You know, like your cousin Meredith. Or are you planning to keep designing other people's dreams forever? Laughter. Not nervous laughter. Comfortable laughter. The kind that says everyone already agrees. I felt my ears burn. My hands shook. I stared at the condensation sliding down my glass and wondered, like I always did, how one sentence could make you feel 12 years old again. Across the table, my mother didn't laugh. That mattered. You just didn't know it yet. Because growing up, there were 2 daughters in our family, but only one success story. Meredith, the golden one. The one whose photos were framed. Whose achievements were announced like breaking news. Meanwhile, my milestones were treated like footnotes. Good, but not great. Nice, but not enough. What no one at that table understood was this. My mother had been watching for years. Watching how comparisons were weaponized. Watching how praise skipped me like a stone on water. Watching how I learned to swallow every insult with a polite smile. And she'd been planning something. Before I tell you what happened next, hold on. Before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? Are you driving? Folding laundry? Sitting alone with headphones on? I love reading your answers down below because it reminds me I'm not telling the story into a void. Back to the table. I didn't answer my father right away. I couldn't. My chest felt tight. But I did notice something strange. My mother reached for her napkin. Folded it once. Then twice. A small habit she had when she was done being patient. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Let him finish." That whisper did more for me than any defense ever could. Because here's the truth no one knew. Meredith's lake house, the one everyone envied, wasn't the trophy they thought it was. And my father? He had no idea what strings were attached to it. No idea whose name quietly controlled the outcome of that entire illusion. And neither did I. Not yet. My dad raised his glass again, basking in the attention, waiting for my embarrassment to bloom into submission. The room buzzed. Someone nudged me playfully, like it was all harmless fun. That's when my mother finally looked up. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply said, "Gerald, are you sure you want to talk about property tonight?" The room shifted. Just slightly. Enough to notice. Enough to feel. My father chuckled. Why wouldn't I? My mom nodded once. Slow. Calm. And that's when I realized this wasn't about defending me anymore. This was about ending something. Because the next thing she was about to say would change how everyone at that table saw success, ownership, and me. The quietest voice at the table was about to expose the loudest lie. My father laughed off my mother's question, waving his hand like she'd made a joke. Property is always worth talking about, he said, especially when some people have it and some people don't. His eyes flicked back to me. Another jab. Another ripple of laughter. My mother didn't react the way people expected. No sigh. No argument. She took a slow sip of her drink, set the glass down carefully, and said, "Then let's talk facts." 3 words.
Calm.
Surgical. I felt my heart thudding in my throat. My mom, Evelyn Whitfield, was never impulsive. She was a former compliance auditor, numbers, contracts, details. When she spoke like that, something was about to be itemized. She turned to my cousin Meredith. "Sweetheart, how's the lake house treating you this winter?" Meredith blinked, smiled too fast. "It's great. Quiet. Peaceful." My father jumped in. Best investment she ever made. Waterfront. Private dock. Some people really know how to build wealth. I stared at my plate, cheeks burning. But under the table, my mom's knee brushed mine, grounding me, warning me, or maybe preparing me. "Meredith," my mom continued, "who handles the mortgage on that place?" A pause. Just a fraction too long. "Well, I do."
Mostly, Meredith said.
"I mean, the bank." "And the down payment?" my mom asked, still gentle. The table went quiet. You know that kind of quiet where forks stop moving but nobody admits they're listening? That kind. Meredith glanced at my aunt, then back at my mother. That was family help. My dad leaned back, amused. "What's your point, Evelyn?" My mother folded her napkin again.
Once. Twice.
My point is accuracy. She turned to the rest of the table. Because I find it strange how often Nora is compared to a property that isn't fully owned by the person being praised for it. A murmur. Confusion. A few raised eyebrows. Meredith laughed nervously. "That's not fair." "Is it untrue?" my mom asked. My pulse roared in my ears. I'd never heard my mother sound like this. Controlled, but relentless. Like she was reading terms and conditions out loud. My father scoffed. "You're splitting hairs." "No," my mom said. "I'm separating image from reality." She reached into her purse. That's when the air changed. Because my mom never brought documents to dinner unless she expected resistance. She slid a thin folder onto the table. It didn't make a sound, but it felt loud. "Meredith's Lake House," she said, "is held in a limited partnership. 51% ownership belongs to a trust." The table froze. My aunt's face drained of color. Meredith stared at the folder like it might bite her. "And that trust," my mom continued, "is managed by me." My father laughed once. Sharp. Disbelieving. "That's impossible." "Is it?" my mom replied. "Because the trust was created 12 years ago. With my inheritance."
To help the family.
Quietly. I finally looked up. My hands were shaking, but something inside me felt steady for the first time. Around the table, people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. Someone else reached for their phone, then thought better of it. The mood had turned heavy, like a storm pressing down on a lake right before the surface breaks. Every unspoken thought felt dangerous now, like one wrong word could trigger something irreversible, permanent, unforgettable. My mom turned to my father. "Before you ask, yes, the payments come from that trust. The maintenance, too. Meredith contributes what she can." Meredith whispered, "Mom." My father stood halfway up from his chair. "So you're saying—" "I'm saying," my mom cut in, "that public comparisons should be based on truth, not theater." Silence swallowed the room. I could feel every eye drifting toward me now, curious, measuring, recalculating everything they thought they knew. Years of assumptions were cracking quietly, like ice under pressure. My father's confidence faltered, just for a second, and that second mattered. It was proof that power built on comparison is fragile. And my mother wasn't finished dismantling it. Not yet. Not even close. The real shift was still forming, waiting, patient, inevitable. And I could finally feel it, breathing behind the silence, ready to surface at last.
For me.
Finally. The laughter didn't return, but judgment did. And this time it turned slowly toward me. No one spoke for several seconds after my mother's revelation. Not my father. Not Meredith. Not the relatives who had spent years applauding someone else's shine while ignoring my quiet grind. It was like watching a chandelier sway after an earthquake, everyone waiting to see what would crash first. My father was the one who moved. He straightened his jacket, forced a smile, and said, "Well, that's generous of you, Evelyn." He turned to the table. Still doesn't change the point. Meredith took initiative. She lives boldly. Ownership is a mindset. A mindset. I almost laughed. My mother didn't argue. She leaned back and let him talk. That scared me more than if she'd snapped. Because when my mom went quiet, it meant she'd already decided how this would end. But then my father looked at me again. "Nora," he said, softer now, like he was being reasonable. "You heard all this. You're talented. So, why haven't you done something like that for yourself yet?" There it was. The pivot. The way blame always circled back to me. 20 faces turned, waiting, measuring my answer. I felt the familiar urge to shrink, to explain, to justify my life in a 30-second speech that would never be enough. Then my mother surprised me. She didn't answer for me. She nodded once in my direction. An invitation. My heart pounded, because I said slowly, I chose liquidity over illusion. Confusion rippled across the table. I kept going, voice steadier than I felt. I designed commercial interiors, hotels, resorts, corporate spaces. I've worked on 3 waterfront developments in the last 2 years. I don't post about it because I don't need applause to validate the work. My father frowned. That's not the same as owning. No, I agreed. It's not, because ownership ties you down, and I was busy building something portable. Meredith scoffed. That sounds like an excuse. I met her eyes. Or a strategy. Silence again, but this one felt different. Sharper. My mom placed her hand over mine. Nora didn't want a house she couldn't walk away from, she said. She wanted leverage. My father laughed. Leverage for what? My mom looked at him. For moments like this. She reached into her purse again. This time, she pulled out her phone. I didn't plan to share this tonight, she said. But since we're discussing achievement, she slid the phone across the table toward my father. On the screen was a rendering. A sleek lakeside property. Glass walls. Clean lines. Private dock. The kind of place people dreamed about. My father blinked. What is this? A project Nora just completed, my mom said. She was the lead designer and silent equity partner. The word equity hit like thunder. My father stared at me. That's not possible. I took a breath. The developer needed design expertise and early capital. I provided both. In exchange, I took percentage ownership. Meredith's mouth fell open. You own that. Part of it, I said. Enough. The room erupted into overlapping whispers. Questions. Gasps. Someone muttered. I had no idea. My father's face hardened. Why didn't you say anything? I shrugged. You never ask. That landed harder than any insult. My mom stood. This isn't about embarrassing anyone, she said. It's about ending the habit of measuring worth by what looks impressive at dinner. She looked directly at my father. You taught Nora to be quiet. I taught her to be prepared. My father opened his mouth, closed it, because for the first time, the comparison didn't favor the person he'd chosen. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. This wasn't the climax. This was only the foundation. Just when I thought the truth had finally settled, my father decided to rewrite the story. The room didn't explode into applause or outrage. It fractured into something quieter and more dangerous, reassessment. People were redoing the math in their heads, replaying every comment they'd ever made about me, wondering if they'd misjudged the wrong daughter for years. My father hated that feeling. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened. So, he said slowly, you've been hiding money now? There it was. The counterattack. I inhaled sharply, but my mother beat me to it. She wasn't hiding, she said. She was minding her business. A concept you've never respected. A few people shifted uncomfortably. My aunt cleared her throat. Meredith crossed her arms, defensive, smaller somehow. My father stood fully now. This is ridiculous. One partial investment doesn't change reality. Meredith lives in her property. Nora designs things for other people. I felt something rise in me, not anger.
Clarity.
I don't design for other people, I said. I design systems, revenue-generating spaces, and I get paid whether I sleep there or not. My father scoffed. You think that makes you better?
No, I said.
It makes me free. The word hung in the air. Freedom. That was what this had always been about. Not houses, not comparisons.
Control.
My mom turned to the table. Do you know why Nora didn't buy a house? She asked. Because she watched me give up my career to support Gerald's image. She learned early what ownership without autonomy costs. My father snapped. That's unfair. Is it? My mom asked quietly. Because you loved the status my sacrifices gave you. That one hit.
Hard.
My father's face flushed. We're not doing this here. You already are, my mom replied. I looked around the table. Faces I'd known my whole life looked different now. Curious, cautious, some apologetic, some still loyal to the old narrative because changing it meant admitting they'd been wrong. Meredith spoke up, voice tight. So what, Nora? You want an apology? I shook my head.
No.
I want accuracy. She laughed bitterly. You think this makes you superior? No, I said. I think it makes the comparisons unnecessary. Silence again. But this time, it felt like control slipping. My father pointed at the phone still lying on the table. If you're so successful, why didn't we know? I met his eyes. Because every time I shared something, you turned it into a competition I never agreed to. That was the truth. And it sliced deeper than any accusation. My mom gathered her purse.
We're leaving, she said. Gasps.
Protest. Someone said, already. Yes, she replied. We came to celebrate the end of the year, not rehash old hierarchies.
She looked at me.
Ready. I stood. My legs felt shaky, but my spine felt straight for the first time in my life. As we walked toward the door, my father called after us. Don't walk out like this. My mom turned back. Like what? Like you've won, he said. She smiled then. Small.
Sad. Certain.
This was never about winning. We left behind half-drunk glasses, unfinished conversations, and a family forced to sit with the discomfort of new information. Outside, the night air felt cold and clean. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for 26 years. I didn't know, I whispered to my mom, that you'd do all that. She squeezed my hand. I didn't know you'd be ready until tonight. I looked back at the house. Lights glowing. Shadows moving. The illusion still standing for now. But I understood something clearly as we walked away. My father hadn't lost face. He'd lost control. And he wasn't going to accept that quietly. I thought walking away was the end. But revenge doesn't always chase you. Sometimes it waits for you to come back stronger. The days after the party felt unreal, like the world had tilted slightly, and I was still learning how to stand on new ground. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from relatives who'd never checked on me before. Messages that started with, I didn't know, or your mom is incredible, or my favorite. Why didn't you ever tell us? I didn't reply, because this wasn't about correcting people. It was about finally choosing myself. My father, on the other hand, did not stay quiet.
3 days later, he called.
I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. By the 5th missed call, my mom looked at me over her tea and said, he's spiraling. I believed her. My father had built his authority on comparison, on being the judge of success. And now, that authority had cracked in front of witnesses. He needed to regain control, even if it meant rewriting history. When I finally listened to the voicemail, his voice was calm.
Too calm.
Nora, he said, we should talk. There are things you don't understand about how families work. I deleted it. The real shock came a week later, when Meredith posted on social media a photo of the lake house. Golden hour. Dock glowing. Caption, grateful for everything I've built this year. Hard work pays off. Thousands of likes. Comments praising her discipline, her success, her independence. My stomach twisted, not from jealousy, but recognition. He was doing it again, reclaiming the narrative, polishing the illusion. My mom saw my face and sighed. He told her to post that. How do you know? Because it's timed, she said. And because he can't stand unfinished stories. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry, because something inside me was shifting. I realized silence had protected me for years, but it had also allowed lies to breathe. The next morning, I made a decision. I called my business partner, Caleb, the developer I'd worked with on the Lakeside project. Remember that open house next month? I asked. Of course. I want my name on it. He paused, then laughed. About time. Word travels fast in small professional circles. Invitations went out. Investors, designers, local press, and yes, family.
My father received his invite last.
He called immediately. This is unnecessary, he snapped. You're trying to embarrass Meredith. No, I said calmly. I'm hosting a business event. You're provoking people. I'm being visible. He went quiet. You think this makes you equal? I smiled. I stopped competing with Meredith years ago. The open house was set for the second week of January. A crisp afternoon. Clear skies. The lake perfectly still, like it was holding its breath. I arrived early, walked through the space slowly, ran my fingers along surfaces I'd chosen. Spaces I'd imagined before they existed. This wasn't revenge fueled by rage. This was alignment. Guests began to arrive. Compliments flowed. Questions turned serious. Numbers discussed. Opportunities opened. Then my family walked in. My father first. Meredith behind him. Both dressed carefully. Controlled. I greeted them politely. Professionally. This is impressive, my father admitted, eyes scanning the room.
Thank you, I said.
It's profitable too. Meredith forced a smile. So, you really own part of this? I nodded. On paper and in practice. She swallowed. As the afternoon went on, I noticed something subtle but powerful. People weren't asking about Meredith's lake house. They were asking about mine. And my father was watching. Every question. Every nod of respect. Every recalculation. That's when I understood the truth about revenge. It isn't loud. It's undeniable. And it was only just beginning. The moment people stop asking about you and start asking you for advice is the moment power quietly changes hands. By the end of the open house, my feet ached and my voice was hoarse, but my mind felt sharper than it ever had. Conversations kept looping back to one thing. How did you structure this deal? Not admiration, respect. The kind my father had always demanded but never taught. I watched him from across the room. He smiled when spoken to, nodded at compliments directed toward me, but his eyes kept drifting,
Counting.
measuring, trying to locate the point where control had slipped through his fingers. Meredith stayed close to him, like a satellite afraid of losing orbit. Near the fireplace, an investor asked me, "Are you planning to scale this model?" "Yes," I said. This was the proof of concept. My father stiffened. He waited until the crowd thinned before cornering me near the window overlooking the lake. "You've made your point," he said. "There's no need to drag this further." I turned to him. I didn't start anything. I stopped hiding. He lowered his voice. "You're humiliating your family." "No," I replied. "I'm correcting a story you told without my consent." That's when he said it, the thing I'd half expected, half feared. "You wouldn't be here without us." I smiled.
Not bitterly. Clearly.
"That's true. And you wouldn't be standing here without Mom." He flinched. Behind him, my mother was speaking with a group of women, calm, composed, finally visible in a way she hadn't been in years. I saw admiration in their eyes. And I realized this wasn't just my reckoning. It was hers too. Later that evening, my aunt approached me quietly. "I owe you an apology," she said. I believed what was easiest. I nodded. Most people do. Driving home that night, my mom broke the silence. "Your father is scared." "I know," I said. "He doesn't know how to exist without being the benchmark." I stared out the window. Then he'll have to learn. What I didn't know was that he wasn't done fighting the shift. 2 weeks later, I received an email from a bank I'd never contacted. Subject line: verification request. I opened it. They were asking about my financial disclosures, my assets, my partnership agreements. My stomach dropped. I called my mom immediately. He's trying to audit me. She exhaled slowly. I wonder how long it would take. Can he do that?
He can try, she said.
But he's forgotten something. What? He taught me the system. I taught you how to navigate it. We spent the next 3 days assembling documents, contracts, proof of funds, compliance trails, so clean they could be used as teaching material. I felt strangely calm,
Prepared.
almost grateful. When the follow-up email came, it was brief, polite.
Closed.
No issues found. My father didn't call after that. Weeks passed. The noise died down. The family chat grew quieter. Meredith posted less. And something unexpected happened. People started coming to me, not just for business, but for perspective. Younger cousins asking about careers. An aunt asking how to negotiate her salary. Even a neighbor asking how to leave a job she'd outgrown. I wasn't the shadow anymore. One evening, my mom and I sat on her porch, tea steaming between us. You know, she said, revenge doesn't always look like confrontation. I nodded. Sometimes it looks like competence. She smiled. Sometimes it looks like peace. I thought about my father then, about how small his world must feel now that comparison no longer worked the way it used to, about how silence, once imposed on me, had become a choice. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything, which is usually the moment someone realizes they've already won. Just when peace settled in, my father made one last move, and this time it wasn't about money. For a while, life felt balanced, too balanced. Work flowed smoothly. New projects came in without me chasing them. My name started circulating in rooms I'd never been invited into before. Quiet rooms. Serious rooms. The kind where success isn't announced, it's assumed. That's when I should have known something was coming. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a call. A physical envelope. Cream-colored. Thick paper. My full name typed neatly across the front. I recognized the handwriting immediately. My father's assistant. Inside was an invitation. A family meeting. Formal. Scheduled. Agenda attached. I laughed once when I read it. Not because it was funny. Because it was desperate. He's calling a tribunal, my mom said after I showed her. What does he want now? I asked. She skimmed the page.
Control.
Or closure. He hasn't decided which yet. The meeting was set at my parents' house. Neutral ground in theory. A battlefield in practice. I debated not going. But something inside me, the same part that once stayed silent, knew avoidance would hand him exactly what he wanted. So I went. The living room was arranged like a courtroom. Chairs in a semicircle. My father at the center. Meredith beside him. A few relatives scattered around, already uncomfortable. My mom sat next to me, calm as stone. My father stood. We're here because this family has lost its sense of unity. I raised an eyebrow. Unity. The word people use when they mean obedience. He continued. Recent events have caused confusion, resentment, and, frankly, embarrassment. There it was. He looked directly at me. Nora has chosen a path that isolates her from us. I spoke evenly. I didn't isolate myself. I stopped playing a role. Murmurs. My father lifted a hand. This isn't about roles. It's about respect. My mom leaned forward. Respect isn't enforced through silence. He ignored her. Instead, he turned to the room. We need to decide what kind of family we are. One that supports each other, or one that competes. I finally understood. This wasn't reconciliation. It was an ultimatum. He faced me again. You've built your success.
Fine.
But if you want to remain part of this family, you'll stop undermining it publicly. I blinked. By existing? By making everything a performance, he snapped. Meredith spoke softly, rehearsed. Dad just wants things to go back to normal. Normal. The word that kept cages intact. I stood. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, I said. But I'm also not shrinking to make others comfortable. My father's voice hardened. Then maybe you shouldn't be here at all. The room went still. That was the moment. The line drawn cleanly, finally. My mom stood with me. If her success threatens this family, she said calmly, then the problem isn't Nora. My father looked at her like he'd been betrayed. So you're choosing her? My mom didn't hesitate. I'm choosing truth. I felt something break and settle inside me all at once. I turned to my father. I spent my whole life trying to earn a seat at this table. Tonight, I realized I never needed one. He laughed bitterly. You'll regret this. I shook my head.
No.
You will. We walked out together. Again. But this time I didn't look back. Outside, the air felt lighter than I expected, like something ancient had finally released its grip. In the car, my mom said quietly, he thought exclusion was punishment. I smiled faintly. He forgot I already learned how to stand alone. What neither of us knew yet was that this meeting, this last attempted dominance, would trigger consequences my father never anticipated. Because when you push someone out who no longer needs you, you lose more than control. You lose relevance. And that realization was about to hit him harder than anything before. I thought being cut off would hurt, but what came next proved how afraid my father really was. The silence after that meeting was different from before. It wasn't tense. It wasn't heavy. It was clean. No group messages. No passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. Just absence. And strangely, absence felt like relief. For the first time, I wasn't bracing myself. Work filled the space quickly. A hospitality firm out of Charleston reached out about a multi-property redesign. Then another inquiry. Then a panel invitation. I stopped being surprised when my calendar filled weeks in advance. Momentum has a way of building once nothing is holding you back. That's when the rumor started. At first, it was subtle. A colleague asked casually, "Hey, did you used to work with family money?" I laughed it off. Then another question, phrased differently. Then an email from a potential partner asking for clarification about my financial independence. My stomach tightened. Someone was planting doubt. It didn't take long to trace the source. A mutual contact forwarded me a message, nothing explicit, just insinuations. That my success was inflated, that my projects were supported, that I wasn't as autonomous as I appeared. My father's fingerprints were all over it. He's trying to poison the well, my mom said after I showed her. Why now? I asked. Because exclusion didn't break you, she replied. So, he's attacking credibility. I sat with that longer than I expected. Credibility had always been his weapon, the thing he guarded most fiercely. And now he was trying to take mine quietly, the way reputations actually die. I didn't panic. I documented every contract, every transaction, every equity agreement. I compiled a clean, chronological record of my work. Not defensive, transparent. Then I did something my father never anticipated. I shared it, not publicly.
Strategically.
I updated my professional portfolio, clarified my role on each project, highlighted partnerships, gave credit generously where it was due. People who matter don't fear transparency. They trust patterns. The whispers faded faster than they'd started. Then something unexpected happened. One of my father's longtime associates reached out to me directly. I heard you might be available for consultation, he said carefully. Separately. I almost declined, but curiosity won. We met for coffee.
He didn't waste time.
Your father doesn't see it yet, he said, but the market has shifted. I raised an eyebrow. Shifted how? People aren't impressed by dominance anymore, he said. They're impressed by clarity. You have it. I thanked him and left, heart pounding, not with pride, but realization. My father's influence wasn't just cracking in our family. It was eroding everywhere. Weeks later, the final confirmation came. A letter arrived at my mom's house from the trust's legal office. Formal, neutral, unemotional. My father had attempted to challenge the trust structure. Quietly, legally, and failed. He wanted leverage back, my mom said softly after reading it. He thought if he destabilized the foundation, everything else would wobble. I stared at the letter. And now, she said, folding it neatly, he knows it's permanent. That night, I sat alone on my balcony, city lights flickering below. I thought about how revenge stories usually go. Shouting, exposure, a final humiliating blow. This wasn't that. This was slower,
Deeper.
more final. My father didn't lose because I attacked him. He lost because I outgrew him. And the cruelest part? He helped build the systems that made it possible. He just never imagined they'd stop centering him. I checked my phone. A single missed call. Unknown number. I didn't call back. Some conversations end without closure. And that, I realized, is a kind of power too. Because when someone no longer controls the story, they fade from it. And my story was moving forward, without asking permission. I thought the story was ending. But revenge has a way of revealing its final lesson when you least expect it. Spring arrived quietly. Not with announcements or apologies, but with distance. Real distance. Months passed without a word from my father. No calls. No letters. No intermediaries testing the waters. At first, I waited for the next move. Then I realized there wasn't one. He was out of moves. Life, meanwhile, kept expanding. I finalized 2 new partnerships. Spoke on a panel about women-led investment models. Signed paperwork that made my hands tremble, not from fear, but from gravity. These were decisions that echoed forward, not backward. One afternoon, my mother called me unexpectedly. "I ran into your father today," she said. My chest tightened. "How was he?" She paused. Smaller. That word lingered. She told me he'd seen her at the grocery store. No confrontation. No anger. Just awkward politeness. He asked about me, casually, like we were distant acquaintances. "I told him you were well," she said. "That you're busy." What did he say?
He nodded, she replied.
Like someone who missed the last train and finally noticed the empty platform. I sat with that image longer than I thought I would. That night, I dreamed of the dinner table, the laughter, the question that started it all. But this time, when my father asked it, no one answered. The room dissolved, and I was already gone. A week later, I received an email from Meredith. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Her message was short. No accusations. No defenses. Just this. I didn't realize how much of my life was built around Dad's approval. Watching you walk away scared me.
But it also showed me something.
I'm not sure what to do with that yet. I didn't respond immediately. When I finally did, I kept it simple. "You don't have to do anything. Awareness is enough for now." She replied with a single word.
Thank you.
That exchange mattered more than I expected. Not because it healed anything, but because it confirmed something vital. I was no longer the emotional storage unit for everyone else's denial. Later that month, I returned to the lake property alone. No guests. No meetings. Just water, still and reflective. I sat on the dock as the sun dipped low, turning everything gold. This place had once symbolized comparison, then proof. Now it was just mine, not as a trophy, as a chapter. I thought about revenge, about how people imagine it as fire.
Loud.
Destructive. Consuming. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is quieter. It's when the person who tried to define you realizes they no longer can. When their voice fades from your internal dialogue. When their opinion becomes irrelevant data. My father didn't lose me in a fight. He lost me in progress. That realization didn't make me happy. It made me free. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed. A notification from my calendar. Strategy session, phase 2. I smiled. Phase 2 wasn't about family, or proof, or correction.
It was about creation.
And the best part? No one from my past needed to understand it for it to work. I drove away as the last light disappeared over the water. No bitterness, no victory speech, just momentum. Because the most complete revenge story doesn't end with someone else's downfall. It ends with your life becoming unrecognizable to the people who underestimated you. And I was finally there. The last twist wasn't what my father did. It was what I no longer felt when I heard his name. A year after that New Year's party, I stood in a completely different room, different city, different energy, floor-to-ceiling windows, contracts laid out neatly on a table that belonged to me. Not borrowed, not symbolic.
Mine.
The kind of space I once designed for others while being told I wasn't doing enough with my life. My mother sat across from me, reviewing papers with her reading glasses low on her nose. She smiled and said, "You know, he would have loved this place." I nodded. That's the strange part. I don't care. And I meant it. That was the final confirmation. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Indifference. People think revenge ends with a confrontation, with a final word that stuns the room into silence. But the real ending is quieter. It's when the person who once dominated your thoughts becomes background noise. When their opinion loses its authority. When their absence stops hurting and starts feeling irrelevant. My father never apologized. He never called to say he was proud. He never admitted he was wrong. And that used to feel like an unfinished sentence. Now it feels like punctuation. Because life kept moving. I expanded my firm, took on a junior designer, and mentored her the way I once wished someone had mentored me. I invested in another project, this one small, intentional, sustainable. I stopped chasing scale just to prove I could. I chose alignment instead. My mother reclaimed parts of herself too. She started consulting again, quietly, on her terms. Watching her rediscover her own voice healed something in me I didn't know was still bruised. Occasionally, I hear updates about my father through distant channels. He still tells the same stories, still reframes the past in ways that protect his ego, still believes control is the same as respect. But fewer people listen now, because control ages badly. What lasts is clarity, and clarity is what he never saw coming. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this. The most powerful revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's building a life so grounded that their judgment no longer has gravity. I didn't win by exposing him. I won by outgrowing the version of myself that needed his approval. If you're listening to this and thinking about the family dinner where you're always compared, the achievement that's minimized, the sibling or cousin who gets the spotlight while you're told to wait your turn, hear me clearly. Your silence can be strategic. Your preparation can be invisible. And your moment doesn't need permission to arrive. Sometimes, the sharpest revenge is simply becoming undeniable. Before we end, if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, compared, or quietly dismissed, take a second to show your support. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Silent Revenge Lab for more stories where power doesn't scream, it builds. Your growth doesn't have to be loud. Your success doesn't have to be explained. And your revenge? It can look exactly like peace. Thank you for staying with me until the end.